The moment you stop reacting, the game dies, because your reaction was never just emotion, it was the fuel. It was the proof that they could still reach you, still shake you, still pull your attention back like a string tied around your heart. And I know you didn't react because you were weak. You reacted because you cared. You reacted because you were trying to save something you believed in. You reacted because your nervous system could feel the distance, the silence, the mixed signals, and it kept sounding the alarm like, fix this, fix this, fix this. But listen carefully. Love should not feel like an emergency you must solve to survive. They kept playing because it worked. When they went cold, you went warmer. When they disappeared, you chased clarity. When they gave crumbs, you tried to turn them into commitment. When they acted confused, you became the translator. When they blamed your feelings, you tried to feel less. That is how the dynamic stayed alive. Your heart kept showing up to prove itself to someone who was never proving anything back. And the most painful part is this: your reaction became their comfort. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because your reaction made them feel powerful. Your reaction made them feel in control. Your reaction meant they didn't have to face consequences, because you were still there, still explaining, still hoping, still reaching. Your reaction cushioned them from the truth. So when you stop reacting, the cushion disappears, and reality lands. At first, stopping feels impossible, because your body is used to chasing relief. Your body thinks relief comes from contact, from a reply, from a moment of sweetness, from a sudden apology, from them coming back just enough to calm your chest. But that relief is temporary, and you know it. It lasts a few minutes, a few hours, maybe a day, and then the cycle starts again. The distance returns, the silence returns, the confusion returns, and your nervous system pays the price again. That isn't love. That's a loop, and loops break when you stop feeding them. Stopping your reaction doesn't mean you don't feel. You will feel deeply. You will feel the urge to text. You will feel the urge to explain. You will feel the ache of wanting to be understood. You will feel the pain of not getting closure from someone who kept refusing to be clear. But power is not the absence of feeling. Power is the ability to feel and still choose yourself. Power is you saying, I'm allowed to miss you, and I'm still not going back into what harmed me. Because the game depends on one thing, that you will trade your peace for their attention. When you stop reacting, you start taking your power back in the smallest, most sacred ways. You take it back when you read the message and don't reply immediately. You take it back when you feel triggered and you breathe instead of typing. You take it back when you stop checking their profile like it's a heartbeat monitor for your worth. You take it back when you let a day pass without proving anything. You take it back when you stop defending yourself to someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. And it's emotional, because you're not just stopping a habit, you're grieving an identity. The identity of the one who tries harder, the one who holds it together, the one who saves the connection, the one who keeps hope alive. You're grieving the part of you that believed love is earned through effort and pain and patience and explaining. But love is not supposed to cost you your dignity. This is why your silence becomes powerful. Not a silent treatment, not manipulation, not pretending you don't care, but a calm silence that says, I'm not available for this pattern anymore. A silence that refuses to argue with mixed signals. A silence that refuses to negotiate with disrespect. A silence that doesn't chase a person who already showed you they can walk away from your heart without protecting it. And when they realize your reaction is gone, they panic, because the game stops working. They may suddenly show up. They may suddenly speak. They may suddenly send something emotional, something nostalgic, something sweet. They may test you with a little hook, just to see if the old you is still there. Because the old you was predictable, The old you would react. The old you would soften. The old you would make it easier for them to return without changing. But the new you doesn't get moved by moments. The new you watches patterns. The new you understands that guilt is not growth, that regret is not accountability, that missing you is not the same as valuing you, that a message is not a rebuild. Because rebuilding trust requires consistent behavior, over time, even when it's inconvenient, even when emotions settle, even when the spotlight is gone. And if they aren't willing to do that, then your reaction would only keep the cycle alive. So you stop giving your love away as a response to their behavior, and you start giving your love to yourself as a commitment to your future. And yes, there will be nights where your chest feels heavy. There will be mornings where you wake up and your first thought is them. There will be moments where you feel lonely and you mistake loneliness for, I should reach out. In those moments, you do the brave thing. You stay. You sit with yourself. You let the feeling pass without making it a decision. You remind yourself, a wave is not a command. You call a safe person. You journal the truth. You move your body. You pray. You drink water. You do something that supports your nervous system instead of feeding the addiction to chaos. Because every time you don't react, your body learns a new truth. I can survive this feeling without chasing. That is how you become free. And freedom doesn't arrive like fireworks. It arrives quietly. One day you realize you went hours without checking. One day you realize you didn't reread the old messages. One day you realize your appetite is back. One day you realize you laughed without forcing it. One day you realize their silence didn't ruin your day. One day you realize you stopped waiting for them to decide your worth. That's when the game truly dies, because the game needed your nervous system to stay hooked, and it needed your heart to stay available to pain. So if you're standing in that moment right now, the moment where you want to react, where you want to chase, where you want to prove, where you want to beg for clarity, I want you to pause and tell yourself the truth. My reaction is not love. My reaction is the fuel. And then choose the smallest act of self-respect you can manage, close the chat, put the phone down, breathe slowly, and let your silence protect you. Let your calm become your boundary. Let your self-control become your comeback. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment you stop being playable, and you start being free, and you keep choosing that again and again. Their playing was never love. It was control through uncertainty and your empathy. And that's the truth that hurts the most, because you didn't enter this with games in your hands. You entered with a real heart. You entered with sincerity. You entered believing that if you loved someone, you showed up, you communicated, you tried, you protected the bond. So when they pulled away, when they went quiet, when they gave you just enough to keep you hopeful and then disappeared again, you told yourself it must mean they're scared. It must mean they're wounded. It must mean they don't know how to love properly. It must mean if I'm patient, if I'm softer, if I explain it better, they'll finally feel safe enough to stay. That's how your empathy became the hook. Because empathy is beautiful, but it can also be used against you when the wrong person learns that your kindness has no boundaries. They learn that if they act confused, you will clarify. If they act overwhelmed, you will shrink. If they act distant, you will chase. If they act cold, you will warm the room. They learn that your heart is trained to repair, even when you're the one being harmed. So they don't have to grow, they just have to trigger your empathy, and your empathy will do the work of keeping the connection alive. And the way they keep control is not always loud. It's not always obvious. It's subtle. It's the slow drip of uncertainty. One day they're affectionate, the next day they're detached. One day they talk about the future, the next day they act like you're asking for too much. One day they're present, the next day they vanish and return like nothing happened. That inconsistency isn't just confusing, it's addictive, because your nervous system starts chasing relief. Your brain starts thinking, If I can just get back to that good version of them, I'll feel okay again. And that's the trap. You stop living your life and you start living for the next moment of relief. Love doesn't do that to you. Love doesn't keep you guessing on purpose. Love doesn't punish you with silence. Love doesn't make you feel like you have to earn basic decency by being smaller. Love doesn't disappear when you bring up something important. But control does. Control thrives in confusion because confusion keeps you busy. Confusion keeps you analyzing. Confusion keeps you trying. Confusion keeps you blaming yourself. And if you're blaming yourself, you're not holding them accountable. If you're busy thinking you're too emotional, you won't notice how emotionally unavailable they are. If you're busy trying to be easy, you won't notice how hard they make simple things. And the most heartbreaking part is, they didn't even have to say, "I want control." They just had to keep refusing clarity. They just had to keep moving the goalposts. They just had to keep giving you half answers. They just had to keep acting like your needs were problems. Because once you start doubting yourself, they don't have to argue with you anymore. You argue with yourself for them. You start asking, "Am I being dramatic?" You start asking, "Should I have brought that up?" You start asking, "Maybe I'm too much." You start apologizing for your feelings before you even express them. You start carefully choosing words to avoid being abandoned again. That's not love. That's fear management. And it's not your fault you fell into it. When you love deeply, you naturally assume the other person is trying too. You naturally interpret their behavior through your own heart. You think, if I'm hurting, I would want to fix it, so they must want to fix it too. But someone who is playing isn't focused on repair, they're focused on advantage. Advantage can look like having you available without committing. Advantage can look like keeping you emotionally invested while they stay emotionally protected. Advantage can look like receiving your loyalty while they keep their options open. Advantage can look like letting you do the emotional labor while they act like they're doing you a favor by staying, and your empathy kept giving them a soft landing. Because you kept looking for the good. You kept remembering the sweet moments. You kept holding on to potential. You kept thinking, they're not a bad person, they're just struggling. And maybe they were struggling, but struggle doesn't excuse manipulation. Wounds don't give someone permission to wound you. Fear of intimacy doesn't justify using your love as a comfort while refusing to treat it with respect. If they truly cared, they would be honest about their limits. They would communicate. They would take responsibility. They would choose consistency, even if it was uncomfortable. Playing is when someone chooses their comfort at the cost of your peace and then expects your empathy to cover the damage. So when you finally see it, it hurts like a betrayal of reality. Because you realize you weren't reacting to love, you were reacting to uncertainty. You weren't addicted to them, you were addicted to the relief you felt when they finally gave you what they kept withholding. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person to meet you in a place they refused to enter. And once you see that, you can't unsee it, because your heart starts recognizing the pattern as a pattern, not as a mystery. That's why your boundaries matter so much now, because the fastest way to break control is to remove the reward. The reward was your attention, your explanations, your forgiveness without change, your availability after disrespect. They played, you reacted, they got access. They pulled away, you chased, they got reassurance. They gave crumbs, you thanked them, they learned crumbs were enough. And you didn't do that because you lacked value, you did it because you wanted love to work. Now you want something different. Now you want peace to work. So you stop feeding confusion with your energy. You stop answering vague messages that only exist to test whether they still have you. You stop explaining your standards to someone who keeps proving they don't respect them. You stop chasing closure from someone who benefited from leaving you open. You stop giving empathy in places where empathy becomes self-erasure. And you learn a new kind of compassion, compassion for yourself, compassion that says, I understand why I stayed, and I refuse to stay again. Because the moment you treat your peace like something sacred, control loses its grip. The moment you stop trying to be understood by someone who keeps choosing misunderstanding, the game ends. The moment you stop translating your pain into softer words so they don't feel guilty, you start telling the truth to yourself. The moment you stop hoping that love will turn a pattern into a person, you start choosing people who show up like love from the beginning, in the way they speak, in the way they repair, in the way they stay present, in the way they protect what they say they care about, in the way they don't make your heart feel like it has to beg for basic safety, in the way they don't create uncertainty and then call you unstable for reacting to it, in the way they don't confuse you just to keep you close, and you begin to feel for the first time in a long time what real steadiness is like inside your chest, what real calm feels like in your body, what it means to breathe without waiting, what it means to love without fear, what it means to be chosen without performing, what it means to be safe without proving, what it means to finally stop calling control love and start calling love what it truly is: consistency, honesty, respect, and peace in your nervous system. Your boundaries don't need speeches, they need consistency, calm, and follow-through, because the people who play with you aren't confused by your words, they are watching your patterns. They are watching what you tolerate. They are watching how quickly you soften after being hurt. They are watching whether your "I can't do this anymore" turns into real distance, or turns into another conversation where they get to explain, excuse, and reset the cycle without changing anything. And I know you've tried to explain yourself. You've tried to say it kindly. You've tried to make it make sense. You've tried to show them your heart so they would finally treat it gently. But the truth is, you don't need better sentences. You need stronger follow-through. Because boundaries are not a performance, boundaries are a decision you keep, even when your emotions beg you to break it. A boundary is not you listing every reason you deserve respect. A boundary is you refusing access to what disrespects you. A boundary is not you proving your pain. A boundary is you protecting your peace. A boundary is not a long paragraph. A boundary is a line, and then behavior that matches that line. This is where calm matters, because when you're emotional, they can turn the focus onto your tone instead of their actions. They can say you're dramatic, you're unstable, you're overreacting, and suddenly you're defending your feelings instead of defending your standards. Calm takes that away. Calm says, "This is what I will accept, and this is what I won't." Calm doesn't argue. Calm doesn't beg. Calm doesn't chase. Calm simply chooses. And consistency is what makes calm powerful. Consistency is you doing the same thing on your good days and your lonely days. The good days are easy. The lonely days are where the old pattern tries to return. The lonely days are where you think, maybe I should just check in. Maybe I should just see what they say. Maybe I should just clear the air. But if the air was always cleared by you swallowing pain, then clearing the air is not healing, it's repeating. Consistency means your boundary does not change just because they suddenly sound sweet. It doesn't change just because they send an apology. It doesn't change just because they say the right words at the right time. Because you're not looking for words, you're looking for a new pattern. You're looking for integrity. You're looking for effort that stays, not effort that appears when they feel you slipping away. So what does follow-through look like in real life? It looks like you deciding what the line is and not negotiating it in the moment. It looks like you not responding to messages that only exist to pull you into confusion. It looks like you not taking calls that happen only when they're lonely, bored, or guilty. It looks like you keeping conversations short and factual when you must communicate. It looks like you not meeting up just to talk, when you already know the talk ends with you feeling drained and them feeling relieved. Follow-through looks like silence that is not a punishment, but a protection. It looks like leaving a message on read and choosing your dignity over your curiosity. It looks like stepping away from the urge to explain yourself to someone who has already heard you and still chose to repeat the same behavior. It looks like blocking access when access becomes a weapon used against your peace. And I need you to understand something that might sting, but it will set you free. The first time you enforce a boundary, you will feel guilt. Because you are a caring person, and caring people often confuse boundaries with cruelty. You will feel like you're being mean. You will feel like you're being cold. You will feel like you're abandoning them. But you're not abandoning them. You are ending the habit of abandoning yourself. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will react when you finally create them. They may test you. They may push you. They may send emotional messages. They may act like they don't understand. They may suddenly promise everything you've ever wanted. They may try to provoke you into breaking your calm, because if you break your calm, they can control the conversation again. They may even try to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself, because guilt has always been a door into your softness. But this is why follow-through matters, because boundaries don't work when they are only spoken. Boundaries work when they are lived. You don't need to announce every boundary. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to convince them. You just need to decide what your life will no longer include and then act like you mean it. If your boundary is, I don't do disrespect, then the moment disrespect shows up, you exit. If your boundary is, I don't do mixed signals, then the moment they start sending confusion, you step back. If your boundary is, I don't do betrayal, then you stop giving emotional access to someone who broke trust. And yes, you can do this with compassion. Compassion is not compliance. Compassion can sound like, I'm not available for this conversation, and then you end it. Compassion can sound like, I wish you well, and then you keep distance. Compassion can sound like, I need space, and then you actually take space. Compassion can exist while you still choose yourself first. Because the real reason boundaries are hard is not because you don't know what to do, it's because you're grieving the fantasy. You're grieving the idea that if you could just say it perfectly, they would finally understand and become safe. You're grieving the version of them you hoped would show up consistently. You're grieving the dream that your love could change the pattern. And grief makes you want to reach back for comfort, even when comfort is the same thing that kept hurting you. So when you feel that pull, come back to one question. Does this choice protect my peace, or does it feed the cycle? If it feeds the cycle, it is not love, it is familiarity. If it protects your peace, it is not cruelty, it is self-respect. And the most heart-touching part is what happens when you stay consistent. Your nervous system starts to calm down. Your mind starts to stop looping. Your sleep begins to return. You stop living in a constant state of readiness, ready to respond, ready to fix, ready to chase. You start feeling something you forgot existed, steadiness. You start feeling proud of yourself, not loud proud, quiet proud, because you finally did what your heart needed you to do. That quiet pride becomes self-trust. And self-trust becomes your new foundation, because when you trust yourself, you don't fear losing someone who isn't safe. You don't fear being alone more than you fear being disrespected. You don't beg for clarity. You don't audition for love. You choose what chooses you back. So don't make boundaries a speech. Make them a lifestyle. Make them a rhythm. Make them something your future can rely on, even when your emotions are loud. Because the game ends when you stop giving it fuel, and the strongest fuel you remove is not your love, it's your access, your attention, your availability, your willingness to keep explaining pain to someone who keeps creating it. And when you hold your line calmly, consistently, without drama, without chasing, without proving, you begin to feel the shift that matters most. You come back to yourself, you stay with yourself, and you stop leaving your dignity at the door just to keep someone else close. Your glow-up is internal first, peace, self-trust, and self-respect. Then everything changes, and I want you to understand why that matters so much, because when you've been played with, you start craving an external win. You want the dramatic comeback. You want the visible upgrade. You want the moment where they see you, and finally realize what they lost. You want proof that you mattered, proof that you were worth it, proof that their behavior didn't destroy you. But if your glow-up is only external, it can still be built on their opinion, and that means they still have power. An internal glow-up is different. An internal glow-up is when your nervous system stops living in survival mode. It's when you stop waking up with that heaviness in your chest, that tight feeling that says, check your phone, check their mood, check if you're still chosen. It's when you stop feeling like love is something you have to earn through patience and pain. It's when your mind starts getting quiet again, not because you don't care, but because you finally feel safe inside yourself. Peace is the first part, and peace is not boring. Peace is not weakness. Peace is your body returning to baseline. Peace is your heart no longer being dragged around by someone's inconsistency. Peace is you not needing to know what they're doing to feel okay. Peace is you not needing a reply to breathe. Peace is you being able to sit in your room and feel present instead of feeling like you're missing a piece of yourself. Peace looks like you setting your phone down and not picking it up every 2 minutes. Peace looks like you eating without nausea. Peace looks like you sleeping without waking up to check. Peace looks like your thoughts slowing down because you're not constantly trying to solve a person who keeps choosing to be unclear. And peace is earned through a decision you make repeatedly. You stop feeding chaos. You stop answering crumbs. You stop chasing. You stop replaying the same conversations. You stop bargaining with your standards. You stop giving access to the parts of you that are still raw to the person who kept making you bleed. Self-trust is the second part, because betrayal and games don't only break your trust in them, they break your trust in yourself. You start thinking, how did I miss this? Why did I stay? Why did I keep forgiving? Why did I keep hoping? Why did I keep shrinking? And if you don't rebuild self-trust, you will carry that doubt into everything. You will question your instincts. You will hesitate in future love. You will feel like your heart is dangerous. But your heart isn't dangerous. Your lack of boundaries was just a doorway, and you're closing it now. Self-trust is rebuilt through follow-through. It's rebuilt when you say, I won't reach out, and then you don't. It's rebuilt when you say, I won't tolerate disrespect, and then you leave when disrespect shows up. It's rebuilt when you say, I need space, and you actually take it. It's rebuilt when you stop abandoning yourself in moments of loneliness. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-trust grows. At first it's shaky, because you're used to breaking your own promises the moment emotions rise. You're used to telling yourself, this time I won't, and then doing it anyway because you miss them, because you want relief, because you want comfort. But the moment you start choosing discomfort over self-betrayal, the moment you start letting feelings pass without turning them into actions, you become stronger than the pattern. And that strength is quiet. It doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need to be posted. It's the kind of strength that makes you feel proud of yourself in your own private moments, when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when it's just you and your choices. Self-respect is the third part, and this is where everything changes because self-respect is the decision to treat yourself the way you wish they treated you. Self-respect is you speaking to yourself gently instead of blaming yourself. Self-respect is you not humiliating yourself for clarity. Self-respect is you not begging someone who played with you to finally value you. Self-respect is you remembering that your love is not something people get to access while they remain unsafe. Self-respect is you raising your standard back to where it always belonged. It is you refusing to accept love that comes with anxiety. It is you refusing to accept closeness that disappears the moment you have needs. It is you refusing to accept a relationship where you are always the one proving, always the one fixing, always the one waiting. And when you build peace, self-trust, and self-respect, everything changes. Because your energy changes, your face changes, your eyes change, your posture changes. You stop looking like someone who is begging to be chosen. You start looking like someone who chooses. You stop speaking from desperation. You start speaking from certainty. You stop chasing love. You start requiring respect. And here's the heart-touching part. The world responds differently to someone who respects themselves. Not because you became cold, but because you became clear. Clear people are harder to manipulate. Clear people don't bargain with crumbs. Clear people don't accept mixed signals. Clear people don't confuse attention with commitment. Clear people don't need to win because they already know their worth. This internal glow-up also changes your taste. You stop craving intensity that comes with chaos. You stop mistaking anxiety for chemistry. You start craving calm. You start craving stability. You start craving honesty. You start craving relationships that feel safe in your body. You start craving love that doesn't trigger survival mode. And when your taste changes, your life changes. You stop returning to the same kind of person. You stop repeating the same dynamic with different faces. You start recognizing patterns faster. You start leaving sooner. You start choosing better. You start building a future that doesn't require you to lose yourself to keep someone else. So if you're tempted to measure your glow-up by whether they regret you, whether they miss you, whether they realize what they lost, stop. That's not your scoreboard anymore. Your scoreboard is internal. Did I keep my boundary today? Did I protect my peace today? Did I speak to myself with respect today? Did I choose my dignity over my craving today? Did I act like someone who loves themselves today? Because one day you will wake up and you will realize something almost unbelievable. You will realize you don't want them anymore. Not because you're bitter, not because you're numb, but because you're healed enough to recognize what you deserve. And that's when everything changes, because when you are no longer hungry for crumbs, you become impossible to keep with games. You become impossible to trap with uncertainty. You become impossible to control with silence. You become someone who can love deeply, but only where love is safe. Only where love is honest. Only where love is steady. Only where love meets you with the same respect you finally learned to give yourself, and you keep building that quietly, steadily, from the inside out until your life becomes proof of your healing, and you don't even need them to see it for it to be real, because you feel it, and that feeling is freedom.